Hello and welcome to the Shotgun Sportsman, a podcast about handgun hunting brought to you by Handgun Hunters International. My name is Ryan Hoover and I'm your host. I believe handgun hunting is the most rewarding way to hunt, and it's something I want to share with as many people as I can. If you are at all interested in getting your own game meat, I want to challenge you to a way of hunting that is good for both your spirit and your body, so you can become the confident, self-reliant person you were meant to be. Today's podcast is with Randy Miller. Randy Miller exemplifies the kind of handgun hunter I want to know. Randy is such an awesome guy. He's a founding member of HHI. He's a good friend. He's a very accomplished hunter. He's modest, but an incredible revolver shot, and just an all-around good guy. On top of that, he's the proprietor of Backcountry Leather Goods, where he makes incredible, innovative, and really well-made holsters, and he just loves fitting his holsters to people's needs. And I know you're going to enjoy this episode. However, before we start, I want to tell you guys real quickly, this year, 2024, is going to be a good one. We're going to have some awesome giveaways. Just in December, we gave away an SSK 50 frame to one of our HHI members that it was entered to win. And so if you join HHI, you will be automatically entered to win. On top of that, you get early access to this podcast, and we're looking at introducing more and more things to our membership. You get access to our incredible forum. And I always say that, and some people tell me forums are dead, blah, 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 but that's not true. You know why? Because we run our forum on one rule, and that is all you're required to be is polite. So you get to escape the regular internet forum craziness and know that you're going to come to a place that is kind of like the old show Cheers. You know, everybody knows your name, questions asked, everybody is friendly, everybody shares information just so freely. It's an awesome place. It's the best hunting forum on the internet, and I know I'm biased, but I would say that anyway. Okay, anyway, thanks for listening to that. Now let's get on to my interview with Randy Miller. Randy Miller, thanks so much for doing the podcast with me today.
Hey, it's great to be here. Great to see. Great to talk to you again, Ryan.
Yeah, man. So I say this to everybody, but you are probably the person that I hold up as like who I want the handgun hunting community to include. If I can brag on you to you've always been selfless. You've always been helpful. You've always put your money where your mouth is. You're always trying to come up with new innovative products for the handgun hunting community. And so I thought it would be a good idea to immortalize your voice through this podcast.
Well, I appreciate that. That's nice of you.
I know that we did one, I guess it was last year, with the four of us at your hunting camp. And so people are probably already familiar with who you are, but, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said you've been hunting for a couple decades, handgun hunting for a couple decades now. Is that correct?
That's correct. I started I think my first dedicated handgun hunting season was 2000.
Okay. All right, man, that's close to 25 years now then.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, you're right.
Okay. So one question that I always ask everybody that I want to get talk to you about is the first handgun hunt you ever did. When you were successful, walk me through kind of your emotional state and how you felt in your head after you were successful, after setting the goal and becoming successful at handgun hunting.
Okay. Yeah. I remember that day very well. It was actually back here in Texas, and I had worked with a guy that just talked about handgun hunting, well, like we do today, but I'd never heard anybody be so passionate about something like that. And so my first gun was a Thompson Center Encore, a 12-inch barrel in 44 mag, and it was scoped. Got proficient with it, and I had a lease here in Central Texas, and I was really primarily a bow hunter at that point. And so I just sat up in one of my bow stands, and if I'm not mistaken, my shot distance was about 35 yards, and it wasn't the first time out that I scored, but the first time I scored was a nice sized doe. She came in about 35 yards, or right around there. What I remember is it taking forever to get the doe in the right position, for me to get the gun up and cocked without spooking her, And then three, probably more than anything, was to calm my nerves enough to fire the shot. It was thankfully it was a bang flop. She hit the ground. It made a great shot on her. It was very close, obviously, 35 yards. And I remember never feeling anything like that prior to that in my hunting career, up to and including taking animals with longbows and recurves that I had built myself. And pretty amazing experience. And from that day forward, I've literally been dedicated handgun hunter and almost exclusive handgun for 20, like you said, almost 25 years now. And went up the spectrum, started with that Encore in 44 and got into the bottleneck cartridges and went up the scale there and then kind of went back down. And this, the day that I shot a deer at about 200 yards with a handgun, which was a 708, was the day that, and I had, I enjoyed that quite a bit, but that was the day that I decided to move to revolvers. And that was a few years into my handgun hunting. And I will tell you, once I went to revolvers, I've never looked back, and I've just been addicted to revolvers, primarily single action, but I've had double actions over the years, but just been obsessed with hunting with revolvers ever since.
That's a statement. You got more joy out of killing a doe than with a recurve bow you made yourself.
That's correct. I
Man,
built for quite a years. I built really long bows and a few recurves because I was a pretty dedicated traditional bow hunter, and never felt anything like pulling the trigger on an animal with a handgun.
okay, well, I want to get to that, back to that philosophically in just a sec, but did you grow up hunting?
Well, here's what's interesting. Not really. I say not really. My dad did not hunt. My mom's side of the family did, but my dad did not. He never really took to it. But my mom's side of the family they were farmers by trade, and so we had access to farmland. But when I was about 11, some friends of my dad talked him into trying dove hunting. So he bought each of us a shotgun. I was 11 at the time, and he tried it once or twice and just didn't take to it, and really was not interested in hunting. From the day I saw that first dove fall out of the sky, I was addicted to hunting ever since. My first whitetail kill was actually, I still have the gun, was a pre 64 model 94. Is that right? Or am I getting that backwards? I think
Yeah.
it's pre 64 model 94 Winchester 3030 with iron sights.
Mm-hmm.
And that too was a doe. And I did that at 15 years old. And I will tell you, since, a lot of firsts that made a huge impact, seeing that first dove fall and then seeing that first deer fall. And I've just been, I've been a hunter ever since then.
That's awesome. I'm kind of similar. My dad, who was an awesome shot, was not a hunter. Is not a hunter. My mom, not a hunter. I got introduced to it by a guy in our church and just kind of took to it myself because I was always fascinated and drawn to the idea that I could get my own food. I've always liked the whole self sufficiency thing, but the idea, I want to kind of just, because I think you'd be a good guy to talk to about this. The idea that I've never heard it articulated like precisely, because I don't know if anyone can. But what do you think it is about handguns specifically? Because your story is not unique to our. I mean, it's your story, obviously, so it is unique. But it's that sentiment is very similar to myself, to a lot of other people we've had on the podcast, to a lot of members that I've talked to. There's just something about it. Philosophically, what do you think it is?
Oh gosh, I've actually sat and wondered this myself because I mean I was a hardcore bow hunter, and I've often wondered why um, handgun hunting just hit my soul so much harder than even archery, and I don't know the answer to it. I think for me anyway, my experience and going back to the days prior to traditional bows, and even with traditional bows, I think is the same thing. To me, it was always harder to make a handgun shot, and I think it's the certainly with a rifle having the connection to 2 points or with the shoulder as a rest, I think had a lot to do with it. But even with a bow, you really, I think you're anchored very well with both arms, or at least I always felt that way. And with a handgun, it seems like the very slightest mistake turned into the very slightest um, wobble, if you will, or shake, just could potentially turn into the largest mistake possible downrange. It didn't take much, and I think for me, it's always been more of a challenge to pull off um, a shot with a handgun than it was with anything else. And I don't know if that is why I like it so much, or the fact that I love simplicity and I'm always looking for ways to simplify what I'm carrying. So I love the fact of having nothing but a single gun attached to me, and nothing else, and being able just to walk, in the woods completely hands free. Um, I don't know. I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
You said something that I hadn't ever thought of because, we are kind of, as far as hunting fanaticism, I guess you'd say, and style, we are connected to bow hunters. We really like the fact that we're hunters, that we're not just always shooters. But I never really thought about the fact that, and I have done very limited bow hunting, very limited bow shooting, and it's been a long time. But I do know, like when you pull a bow, you do have it does feel more supported in the tension, right? Like the tension of the bow, your limbs, not the bow's limbs, but your arms feel more supported and steady when you have your hand back on your cheek, looking through the sights. So I've never, or I mean, not in your case, you were doing traditional, but a lot of that kind of thing. I guess you're right. I never thought about that. That a handgun is even more unsupported than a bow.
Yeah, and certainly, um, with the compound being able to you having 2 points to stabilize yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and for me, and I think a lot of people would call me crazy, I always felt like hunting with a longbow or recurve versus a compound was easier, and that was because you didn't have. I mean, when you pulled it back, you're not really anchoring for long. Typically, when you draw the bow, you are releasing pretty quick, and so I just always felt more stable, or felt like making an archery shot was always easier for me, because with a handgun, as you know, you can do everything right, get the hammer back, and you can sit there for a while, and that's when the fever creeps in.
Yeah, that's true. Because with recurve, like you're talking about traditional archery, it's not the same. Just like hold it back, hold it back, hold it back. It's pretty much when you're ready, you're almost just drawing and shooting, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Hmm. Okay, well, tell me what you think about this. I've never been a bow hunter because I've never really been into bows. I always thought I was always into guns, and I always was fascinated by their ability to be objects, both of high art and high engineering. It takes a lot of to get to where we are now with the modern gun has been just a feat of some amazing people. And some of the things that we can buy off the dealer shelves now are more precise, more finely tuned, and also better looking than people might argue with me about this than at any time. Like as far as off the shelf stuff is concerned. So,
Sure.
from my perspective, it's always just been like I've been drawn to this piece of equipment that I can also fulfill my desire to get food from the wild with. But you obviously you were drawn to the bow because you were building them. Um, so how was it as far as the trying not to get too esoteric here, but like your draw away from bows into handguns, if you follow me.
Yeah, no, I do. And honestly, when I picked up the handgun, I mean, I was, uh, from a general season or a rifle season perspective, talking Texas terms here, I was 100% dedicated to the handgun. However, I still would archery hunt during the archery season, but what flipped in me was it was only for the archery season. And then once the general season opened, I immediately put the bow down and I mean, rarely picked it back up in the gun season. It just, I think something you said, I think hit home with me as well, is that you've always liked guns. You were never really drawn to bows. I was drawn to bows, but I think growing up around guns, at least after I was about 11 or 12, there's something about just a gun itself. And I've always enjoyed that perspective of it. But once archery season was over, that was it. I put the bow down and I just couldn't wait to, in fact, in many seasons, I carried a handgun legally, but I carried a handgun during archery season. And I always said, I'm out here, I'm kind of really hog hunting. I'm carrying a bow in case I get an opportunity at a deer, but it was still legal for me to kill a hog during archery season with a handgun. And that's what I always was kind of preferred to do if the opportunity um, came up.
So, when do you bow hunt at all anymore?
Very rarely, and I will tell you what changed in that is a few years back I started going out west every year chasing elk or mule deer or antelope with a handgun, and that has always been kind of a mid-October hunt, depending on where we draw or what we do. And because that happens in October, which is right in the middle of archery season here in Texas,
Hmm.
my entire year is my thoughts are consumed with that Western hunt, and that typically kicks everything off. And because of that, because it's with a handgun, I just have I wouldn't say completely lost interest in archery. It just has taken a back burner to everything else.
Gotcha. So, rolling that into the idea of handgun hunting as a sport, one of the things that I'm always trying to do, obviously, running an organization that has to do with handgun hunting, and following up on people who are just getting into it, people who have been into it for a while, people who are coming back to it. And I have always had this sense, and our friend Heath, Tyler, and I have always, we've talked about this, like, there has got to be this, I just believe it, that there's this subset of people out there that are just waiting to discover handgun hunting. And here's why I think that. Because for me, and I used to kind of feel weird saying this, but I don't anymore. Handgun hunting made me a better person because I discovered it, or excuse me, I didn't discover it. I committed myself to it at a time in my life where I was having a rough time, and found that by overcoming the challenge to get good enough to be successful with a handgun in the field, I thought, and people have heard me say this, I thought, what else could I overcome? And it really boosted my confidence, and it helped me in other areas of my life. Now, I don't know how much that's true for everybody else, but I just feel like there are experiences like that that I hear about all the time. And one of the reasons that I'm always seeking stories of people who have been doing this for a long time and I guess their genesis in handgun hunting and how they felt about it is because I want to be able to kind of encapsulate that and be able to show people what handgun hunting has to offer. And I will say, like, for me, my goal is to support and grow the handgun hunting community, whether or not people join HHI. So this is not just a self-promotion thing. This is like, I want to crack this puzzle. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can understand from your perspective because it is a very difficult it's a difficult thing to accomplish. I personally have never really thought of it in that regard in terms of overcoming things or accomplishing things I've never done before. But from a sport perspective, and I personally think most people probably would lean more towards the sports side of it. Um, I think I think the challenge of it is what is such a huge thrill. And I think so many people, they probably don't realize, and I believe we actually talked about this on the last podcast we did. I think most people don't realize they probably own something to at least attempt. handgun hunting in some form or fashion. And if they, I believe, and I've turned a few people even on my lease onto handgun hunting. Now they haven't become obsessed with it like a lot of us have, but they still will hunt with a handgun several times a year. Based on my experience, I think a lot of these guys out there, especially if they're rifle hunters, if they would, if they would just try handgun hunting a time or two and get an animal under their belt, I think so many more would be turned on to the sport.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And to back up what you said, I did a survey of a bunch of handgun hunters, several hundred, and the number one reason that people said that they were handgun hunters is because of the challenge.
Yeah, yep.
And
And it's such a and then but to kind of tie in what you said, when you take that first animal, especially for me personally, when I take an animal, an edible animal, not just, a varmint that that's a nuisance animal or something, but when I take something that I can actually feed my family with, that's such a huge accomplishment. And to me, it just kind of it brings it full circle. And it's a huge challenge. It's fun. It's exciting. It's difficult, and yet you're still, potentially accomplishing the same results, and that's filling the freezer.
amen. And I know I want to talk about that in just a little bit because I know we're both kind of definitely into the food side of it. One of the things that though I have talked to people that has always been amazing to me that I share is, for instance, the last podcast I just released with Dick Thompson. He's he is in his 70s, and he told me that today his handgun kills still get him juiced up, like real excited. And to find something that you do for over 50 years that still brings that kind of excitement into your life when you're successful at it. I mean, that's worth the price of admission right there. It's just such a cool prospect to be able to look forward to that.
100% agree. And, we've got guys on our lease. In fact, last week, I was out at my lease and one of my lease mates had brought a friend down and he wasn't hunting that here because he couldn't, but he was a hunter. And he just kept talking, well, and I hear this so much. I'm just at our stage in life. Oh, I'm just not that mad at him anymore. And I'm not mad at deer, but I still go out and attempt to fill all my tags every single year. Not just because I enjoy the kill, but I do love pulling the trigger. Don't get me wrong. But it is still such a huge thrill to me, and there's always families that are willing to take the meat. So I agree with Dick, and that's encouraging to hear that at 70 he still gets fired up about it because after about 25 years, I'm 50 now. I still, um, it hasn't lost any of its luster for me. And like I said, we can kill 5 deer in Texas, and I try every year to fill all my tags, and they're always with a handgun.
Yeah, same. And you're absolutely right about like the being able to bless your family with this meat that you got from the wild.
Absolutely.
We don't buy beef anymore at my house. We just subsist on deer meat. And yeah, as my kids are getting up to the age where my daughter killed her first deer this year, and my son and I are going in a couple weeks, and my littlest is 5, and she was with me for the first time this year when I killed a deer, and then she was with me, and she keeps calling it her deer because
Yeah.
we made jerky, and we were sharing jerky with everybody, and she's always asking me, "Is that my deer? Are you sharing?
Yeah.
Is that from my deer?" And she's
That's
just
awesome.
she's
That's a great
I
story.
love it. She's
And that,
into it. Yeah. Well, I also like, this is something that I say again. I harp time and time again on this, and I feel like you're right. People have something that they could use. Find a way to hunt with what you have. But one of the things that I run into, for instance, I live not too far from where you live, but I have access to land to hunt on, but only through a private relationship with a very old dear friend. And I don't really have a place where I can take people. I don't even have a place where I can take people shooting. Just anybody listening, Google land prices, house prices in Gillespie County, Texas, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Why there isn't a shooting range here, because it's used up for other purposes. But anyway, I'm always struggling with the access issue, right? Like the people come up to me, want to get into it, and I don't have a way to like necessarily take them under my wing unless they already have a place to shoot and hunt. So moving forward, what do you think the answer is going to be? I mean, this is a broader hunting access question anyway that a lot of people are talking about, but I think it's, essential for those of us who are kind of evangelists for the sport to be able to proselytize. Now you have a lease that you generously have brought me and some other guys out to, and I know you have a way to introduce people through that. But as far as, people in my shoes listening, what just your thoughts on how to creatively end run some of these access issues that we have?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I don't want to get too deep into this on what has caused it, but unfortunately, and again, most of my hunting and most of my experience has been in Texas, but in Texas, because it is like 97 or 98% privately owned, and because of I would say some of the ways that the hunting industry has gone in Texas, it's become, I hate the term rich man sport, but it is quickly becoming that, simply because there's not enough, I feel like there's not enough public land in Texas. And secondly, because of some other things that have become, they're useful tools, but they've also jacked the prices up on land access and what it takes to not just buy land, but even lease. We've some guys on my lease and we've been kicking around the idea of what is the future once we lose this. Eventually, we're going to lose this place, and with the land prices and lease prices, what are we going to do? And I don't know what the answer is. We've talked about even trying to find a decent piece of land and co-op together, meaning 5 or 6 of us go in together with a very good set of I guess rules or agreements, and then go in together and buy the land ourselves, so that you're not trying to buy 1,000 acres alone or put a down payment on, or what would be required on a down payment for something like that, but then you still get to enjoy having land of your own to hunt on, to share with friends, bring family out there, and just enjoy the creation.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever hunted on public land in Texas?
I'd have when I was in college. I went to Texas A&M, and so we were relatively, and my wife and I, we lived in Houston for a while, so we were relatively close to East Texas, which is where the majority of our public land is. And so when I was in college, I spent a lot of time roaming the Sam Houston National Forest and Davy Crockett National Forest out there in East Texas. The same thing when we lived in Houston. That was almost exclusive. That was back when I was almost like an exclusive bow hunter, and managed to kill a few pigs out there and a couple of deer. But that was, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the Sam Houston is like 160,000 acres. And back then, a public hunting permit was $35. I'm sure it's gone up from that now, but it's still, if you have access to public land, that's it's still the best deal going, to just get yourself outdoors and to be able to go experience it.
Yeah, I have never, but I am continually researching how that would work. We've had some contact with the Parks and Wildlife, et cetera, and people always say, yeah, Texas is X% private, which is true, and it's a shame in some respects. In other respects, it's not a shame, but we won't go down that road. But that also means, right, like 2 or 3 million acres of Texas is public. However, what people don't recognize with that is if you go through the Parks and Wildlife public land, WMAs or whatever they have, so much of that, I would say a large percentage of it, is either restricted to bow hunting or bird hunting.
Yep, I've seen that as well.
And I get it. There's a 120 acre WMA close to where I live, 25 miles away, but it's really close to a populated area. So I understand why they only have bow hunting there. And so I'm always just asking fellow Texans about what their experience is, because there is some up north in the Panhandle and out west towards the Big Bend area. There's some public land, but is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't live close enough to be able to invest time to go out and scout and
Right.
really spend some serious time, you're right. It becomes risk reward type conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, hopefully, as our group grows and more people weigh in on this, we'll find more ways. I don't know. I haven't told you this, but I've had more people coming out of the woodwork saying, "Hey, if you're ever in my neck of the woods, come hunt with me." Or, "Hey, I have a place that I'm going to try and put together." You were one of them. I have a place. We'll have a few people out to hunt. So yeah, another HHI member put together something that we're going on in a couple of weeks up in North Central Texas. So I'm hopeful that more people coming out of the woodwork and having this kind of network will be something that definitely we as handgun hunters and specifically HHI members can take advantage of.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed.
agree.
Okay, so talking about moving on to you are the proprietor, which is a fancy word of saying you do everything from pull the stitches to sweep the floors of Backcountry Leather Goods. And I have two of your holsters, and I absolutely love them. I I tell people about them all I can for two reasons. One, they're fantastic. Two, I'm such a fanatic about the trades. I've always been wanting to support people who are trying to either preserve or make a living at or do a good job in the trades, and you're definitely one of those people. Tell me, how did you get into leather work?
Okay, I will. First of all, I appreciate the compliment. That really means a lot to me. Here, when I was very young, my dad, when he was growing up, he was a hobbyist leather crafter, and he bought me an entry level kit. Um, I was probably in about 10 years old, and we did a wallet together. Now, that was when I was about 10, and like most 10-year-olds, I didn't have much of an attention span. So I didn't really have much interest of it in it when I was young. However, as I got older and really where I really started um, doing more for myself is when I became a traditional archer, and that's when I started making my own back quivers and arm guards and things like that. And and similar to where the way the holster business or the other side of this has taken off, I had a few friends that would see it and they would like what I would do, and I would make them for them. But then when I got into handgun hunting 20 something years ago, now that first one was an Encore, and I think I carried it in a sling. But when a few years after that, when I bought my first revolver, as probably everybody listening knows, the possibilities are endless between the handgun you choose and sights or no sights and red dot versus scope and different types of scope and mounts. And I mean, it's just you can't just walk into any sporting goods store and say, I have this gun with this optic and I need a holster for it. That literally just does not exist. And so, similar to what I was doing when I was a traditional archer, I started making holsters for myself that fit the specific gun and optic that I was hunting with at the time, and that was enough for me. Quite honestly, that was 20 something years ago. And then, like a lot of businesses, somebody would see something I was doing, and they said, "Hey, would you make one for me?" And I was like, "Sure." So that continued for years and years, and then it just started kind of snowballing to the point where some people were saying, I think you need to pursue this a little more." And then, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago, when me and another HHI member, Andy Nichols, my elk hunting partner, we started going out west. I was making a lot of holsters, and I still do for people, rifle slings and butt cuffs for the lever action crowd as well. But for me, I was, making holsters and belt slides and things like this, and still hadn't really opened it up as a side business, if you will, And then it was those hunts out west where I really, everything kind of solidified for me. And it's actually where I was inspired by the name Backcountry Leather Goods, because our very first hunt together, we did a drop camp that was 10 miles deep in the Gila in New Mexico off horseback. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, I want to do this. I want my items to look good, but more than anything, I want to know when I go 10 miles deep, I'm not going to have to worry about it. And so that has kind of driven me this entire time, and that's where the name was born. Backcountry Leather Goods is born from me walking around chasing elk in the Gila National, the Gila in New Mexico 4 or 5 years ago.
Interesting. I would say that my favorite thing about backcountry leather goods is how you see everything you do seems to be the solution to a problem, and not like a, oh my gosh, we have a problem here, but you're thinking, like you said, I want to know that it's going to last. Your chest rig was an answer to a hole you saw in the market of things that didn't work exactly like you wanted to. Your Texas Sidekick, another answer to something you were thinking. It would be nice if holsters could do X, Y, Z. So what is your kind of process for coming up with new designs?
I can speak for days on this. It's funny because Trapper was just here a few days ago, and he had his wife with him, and I wanted to dig out my personal chest rig, and I dumped a canvas bag onto my leather table, and it was a pile of various holsters and belt slides, and I mean, you name it. It just was, and that was all from this season. And so what happens is I spend all my time at my lease, whether it's hunting season or not. I'm constantly testing out new things. I'm altering holsters all the time, and it's usually through that new ideas come up. Either I'm perfecting one and an idea for something else comes up, or I'm just constantly trying to make something better. The Texas Sidekick's a great example of that. I'm still working on that one. I like where it's at, but I think I've got another iteration of it that I've been working on all season, and I'm close to getting it finalized as well. But I'm constantly, constantly just walking around at my lease, trying new things, trying new positions of where guns should ride, how they ride, where they ride, different types of systems, and I think I get as much of a kick out of that. Just I don't know if innovating is the right word, but just I think I have a restless dissatisfaction with what exists, and always maybe and that may not be the best way to describe it, but always looking for ways. I'm always looking for ways to simplify what I'm carrying, simplify my product that I'm kicking out, make it better, make it easier for people, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Which brings me to a question that I was kicking around with Heath, because Heath runs a small FFL dealer gun shop where he does mostly online stuff, but he caters to handgun hunters. And we were talking about the modern customer, when I was in the custom gun world, I would have called him a client, but just kind of one of the things that I think handgun hunting is facing is that it has basically two suppliers. It has the faceless, nameless, giant gun companies that kind of kick out hunting guns as an afterthought. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great. There are, just to say, and it feels to me like sometimes they're just like, we'll just see if this sells. Then there's some, and of course there's exceptions to the rule. Freedom Arms is always the one. BFR and Freedom Arms are the ones that I think are the exceptions to the rule. And then there are people like you and Heath and me when I was in the business who are really focused on being customer centric and giving the handgun hunting community what it needs through intentional innovation. Yes, you use the right word there. You definitely are innovative. intentional innovation and figuring it out through relationship with clients. However, these days we're up against first of all, we're up against the internet. The internet is a blessing and a curse. And the fact that somebody can go buy whatever supply, in your case, like your competitors, whatever would be a leather holster, you can go buy 60, $70 on the internet. You can have it in a day, and it's not the same, obviously. But I don't know. This is still obviously a burgeoning kind of thought in my head that I'm gathering people's people's opinions on. In your mind, where is the line going to be drawn? Is this something that we're always going to have to face, and eventually, it's just going to be impossible for the small time guy to be successful, or do you think there are enough people out there for whom it is important to buy from from somebody with a face, basically?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I don't know the demand. There may be some guys out there that are doing this, doing what I do full time and doing very well. I mean, there are some heck of a great um, craftsmen out there, and they may be able to. They may have enough of a customer base or following or product line to be able to make a living at it. I don't know. I don't. I can't imagine it ever growing to that point. And I don't know that I want it to, quite honestly. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question the way what you're looking for. But I will tell you, me personally, I really, really love the custom side of this, and I've told several people this and this is what I think makes, small guys like Heath or maybe even my little business special. And that is this: people can call me, and it literally doesn't matter what they have, what combination or what they want. I'm going to do my best to make it. I've told a lot of people this. My favorite calls are when people call me, when someone calls me and says, "Hey, I got this crazy idea," and I'm like, "I already love it. I'm in." And so what I love doing is hearing from guys that say, "I got such and such handgun with this optic. I want it to ride right here on my body, and I want it to do this." They just go through this laundry list of things that is the perfect rig or perfect setup for them, and then I love taking that and turning it into reality. And I think so. That's why I don't know that a standardized type system is ever going to be the answer in this industry, because I think all of us are so different. We've got so many different possibilities to choose from, and everybody's different in terms of what they prefer to hunt with, how they want to hunt, and so I don't know that the standard system of holster making is ever going to be there. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, other than you take something that's a very, very common make and model or platform of a gun, and it's something that you can find, made probably most likely probably made in Asia for 60 or $70 in a sporting goods store.
Yeah. I guess now that listening to your talk, one of the biggest differences is that you don't really have aspirations of this ever, making you rich.
No, no, yeah, gosh, no.
And that's fine. And
If
yeah,
yeah, no, if anybody's ever figured out how to become rich as a leathersmith, I'd love to rack the brain, because there's nothing I enjoy more than sitting out in my leather shop all day and
right.
working on orders. But
Yeah.
no, I see this just being a side hustle for a long time, and then hopefully when I retire, it'll be enough to keep me busy during the day.
Yeah. And so I love that too. When I was running my gun shop, that was my favorite thing too, is someone come in and they would say, "I have this crazy idea." As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that I shut down my shop is that I wasn't getting enough people with crazy ideas. I was looking around at everything that I was doing and thinking, this is just another version of what somebody else is making for cheaper, you know? And
Yeah.
I could have, I didn't shut down my shop because I wasn't doing well. I shut down my shop because I wasn't doing what I was put on this earth to do. But I just think about the people out there. You're right, because in order to make like a thriving business, correct me if I'm wrong about this, just using your business as an example, it would have to be, you would have to come up with some standard models that you then taught two or three other people how to make on a production basis, and then you would be left to run the custom shop. But man, that's a lot of time and money to get that going.
It is.
And it's
It's a
a
huge investment.
right, and the market's awash with that kind of thing. So one of the things that Heath and I talked about is how we shop. What's important to us, and I'll be honest with you. I am a total victim to the 21st century right now mentality. And I have ever since the 20th century. I've always been like, man, I don't want to wait for that. And so if there's and plus I'm always on a budget. I have 3 young kids. So if there's some place I can get it cheaper and faster, then a lot of times I'm going to click and do it. Of course, I always try to buy from friends when I can, but it's a difficult decision to make. Heath was telling me, he's very much, if he has somebody he can call and chew their ear off for a while, he's much more likely to buy from them. And Heath, if you're listening and I got that wrong, I'm sorry. But the 2 type of people that I'm talking about. So
Yep.
I'm just curious because I know through what I've heard from industry folks that handgun hunters are actually, of all the subsets of the hunting sports, handgun hunters are the most likely to actually spend money on things that they ask for people to make. But it's difficult. It's difficult when, you're like, let's just take the XP100 for example. The modern version of the XP100 is that Nosler Independence pistol, and you can't find one for what, 1,800 bucks. And so how many people are getting priced out of that? I guess I'm rambling, but my question is more about where do you see the future of the industry and what kind of customer is the handgun hunter?
Well, I think you're right about the like the SP side, and the Nas are great guns, by the way, but they are pretty expensive. Um, I think the history, I think the future, and if you look at everything that's gone on just in in America the past few years, I think everybody for the most part is much more budget conscious. So I think I think what well, I don't know if this is the future, but I think what we need is very, very solid entry level platforms. And entry level can mean a lot of different things, because you can buy an entry level Ruger for maybe $1,000, maybe a little bit less, and that may still price some people out. But I think having a very solid entry level platform that's going to cover 90% of the needs of people out there is what is needed. And Ruger, maybe they fit the bill as is. I don't know. But if we ever lose the quality side of it, it's everything is a price value proposition. And but I think that's the side of the market that we can't ignore, is the entry level market.
That's a good point. And there are a lot of good options out there. However, a new Ruger Red Hawk, the dealer price is about $1,000. So even that is getting away from us. So
Yeah.
I just think, I don't know. I think it's going to take someone who, like SSK, I foresee them doing good things, especially with Brian Alberts as their general manager, because he's committed to the product, and he's not making decisions from a spreadsheet. He's trying to develop real world things. More people like that, the BFR, the people at BFR and Freedom. But yeah, you're right, entry level stuff. But entry level, it's hard to get entry level for 3 figures now.
No, and you're 100% correct. And I think, you mentioned the BFR. I think to me that's about the best bang for the buck for someone coming into the sport. You can still buy a BFR for less than, you know, if it's like a 44 Magnite, some rare caliber,
Right.
probably less than about 1,500. What I love about it is, it is a big gun, but they are well made. They're very accurate, and and I think this is one of the biggest misses of Ruger today is, and it's what Magnum Research includes with theirs, and that's a scope base
Mm-hmm.
that you can mount a scope on, you can mount a red dot on, and it comes with multiple attach points to the frame. And I know Ruger has the Hunter model, but that is not even close to the same thing.
Right.
But I think that's a huge. I personally think that's one huge miss of Ruger today, is not offering a single action handgun with a scope base included that has multiple attach points, something that you don't have to send off to a gunsmith to have the frame drilled and tapped to have a second or third attach point to it.
Right. And that's one of the things that brings to mind is, you talk about BFR, that shop is dedicated to putting out those revolvers. That is what they do. Ruger, I mean, God bless them. They make great guns. I carry a Ruger. I hunt with a Ruger. I love them. But like hunting revolver segment is such a small portion of what they're putting out on whole. So I think one of the things that they lack is somebody with vision in that department to maybe lead it forward, because they still have enough reputation that if their quality is even similar to what it has been, that they'll be able to dominate the market.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. I know, philosophizing about that. I always want to get everybody else's opinion, especially people with more experience than me. But I want to move on to our last topic and then close this out here in a minute. You and I both love the food aspect of hunting. When I was fortunate enough to share camp with you last spring, you were the camp cook, which our meals were awesome, by the way. You got to send me that monkey bread recipe because I want to make it for my family. But
Okay.
so I'd like to talk to you, like, and I know we've talked about this offline, but tell me some of your favorite game preparations. And here's the thing: if someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I don't like deer meat; it's too gamey," what's your answer to that, and what are you going to feed them to prove otherwise?
Okay, so first of all, I absolutely loathe the term gamey. I don't even recognize that in my
Oh,
vocabulary. A
oh,
deer,
let me just stop you right there, because that is one of my soapboxes. Because nobody eats a steak and says, "Oh my gosh, that's too beefy," or they go to Chicken Express and say, "Oh my gosh, that's too chickeny." I don't know what the word gamey means. It just means this meat tastes like it was what it's supposed to be. But yes, I agree with you.
yeah,
I'm sorry you fired me up, but
yeah,
yes, I'm with you.
no, no, yeah, no, you're right. It's a wild animal. That's what it is. And you're right. People get so used to beef that anything outside of that, they it gets classified. And like I said, I absolutely loathe that term, but it's been kicked around so much that it's become almost standard for non-wild game eaters, or at least not non-hunters. If I was gonna, if someone came to me and said it's too gamey, and they were still standing after they made that comment in front of me, I would, and I had the opportunity, and I had the opportunity to cook for them, I would go to the most standby, easy meal that I know that everybody loves, and I'm willing to throw down, and we can have a cook off sometime. But I'm willing to bet that oh, and I'm like you, I we live off of venison year round. We don't, unless we want a ribeye, we do not buy beef in this house. We never have, and I process my own animals. I get a kick of the whole field to freezer thing, knowing everything is done by myself,
Yes, sir.
by me. But I would put my venison burger up against anybody's. And I know that's a bold statement, but I will tell you, if I had someone today that said, no, I won't eat deer, or said, okay, I'll try it, but I think it's going to be too gamey, I would make them a hamburger, and I could turn most people around
Mm.
on thinking about it. That's my opinion, and that's not my person. I mean, I love burgers. Don't get me wrong, but if I'm cooking something for myself, I'm gonna probably lean towards the tenderloin or a backstrap
Hmm.
preparation. But how do you? I mean, who in this country doesn't love a good burger? And if you can
Yeah.
make a good burger out of venison, I think you can convince a lot of people.
So, do you, when you process, do you mix your grind with
I
pork?
do. I mix it with beef tallow,
Oh, okay.
typically
Mm.
about 15% beef tallow. I've never done the pork. I've heard mixed reviews on that. But I mix my burger and my pan sausage with a little bit of beef tallow or
Mm.
beef fat.
Hmm.
And that's even debatable. A lot of people say that you don't need it, and that's fine if that's your preference. I personally enjoy a little fat in mine,
Hmm.
and so that's what I've always done, and we enjoy it here, like I said.
Yeah, we've always just ground straight, like no other additives. I did start adding some of the organs for the mineral content for my kids. It's the only way to get them to eat it. You know, I don't know if I recommend that for everybody, but we enjoy it. But
Hmm.
yeah, and beef fat is highly underrated. Beef fat is so much better
Yeah.
than pig fat. Um,
Yeah.
Not that I don't like pig fat. Fat. I mean, if anybody sees me, they'll know that I definitely like eating fat. But nobody has. I don't know if anyone's ever have said burgers to that question before. You know, for me, it would always be chicken fried backstrap with white gravy.
Yeah.
That's
No,
the
you know what? That's a great choice too, because that's a, but, and here's the thing, I think, and gosh, chicken fried backstrap that's prepared right, like you said, is hard to beat. But I mean, and I'm not knocking your choice, but I mean, you can deep fry boot leather and make it taste pretty good. And so,
true.
if I want them to really taste venison, I think I would throw one of my burgers on the grill for a few minutes and let them truly taste the meat and understand that it is in fact not gamey.
Well, hey, I respect your choice, but I'm not really I'm not really qualified to answer this question because, like you, I get frustrated at the term gamey. I love foods. I love weird foods. I was not born with that thing in my brain that says it looks or smells a certain way, so don't put it in your mouth. I was just like, if it's eaten somewhere in the world, I want to figure out how to try it. And so I'm not I'm never the one, and then I'll always get mad when someone's like, no, it was still gamey. And I'm like, I can't taste that at all. And so anyway, well, then the opposite question, what if you're cooking for someone like me? What's going to be like your favorite? You don't have to worry about if people are going to like it, but just straight up favorite way to cook game meat.
Oh man, probably. Well, it probably wouldn't be tenderloin because I doubt I would share those with you. So I'd probably go to a backstrap, and I got a pretty good backstrap recipe, I feel like, and it's something that everybody does. But I do believe in tenderizing it a little bit with a hammer or some sort of tenderizing tool, and rub it down with a little olive oil, season it up with however you like. Throw a little cheese in there. It could be cream cheese. I personally like either I like using cream cheese, and you can buy the kind that's pre-mixed with like pineapple or jalapeno or something like that. And to
Hmm.
me, that especially with the pineapple having a little bit of sweet in there, I think is a good offset. Roll it up with some bacon, and I've done it both way. I've done it two ways, and I think both ways come out well. And oh, and I'll say this: a lot of people say, "Yeah, use thick cut bacon." Bacon. That is a mistake. By the
Right.
time the bacon's done, the deer meat is well done. So use thin cut bacon, and I really don't. You don't even need to eat the bacon. It's more just to hold it together and add maybe a little bit of flavor. But the two ways I've done it is I've smoked it real slow till it's about maybe 130 internally, or I've also done it real fast, just like you would almost like you would grill a burger and just keep bouncing it over fire till the bacon's done. Thin cut bacon. When the bacon's done, take it off, and it's unbelievable.
That thin cut bacon is a top tip for everything you wrap in bacon, I think.
Yes, agreed.
Jalapenos, whatever, because you're right. It's either raw bacon on the inside or everything
Yeah.
else is too cooked. I'm simple. Like, I'd just give me a steak. Like, I don't care.
Mm.
Cut from the ham, cut from the backstrap, wherever. I just love straight up steaks, and so does my daughter. But one of the ways that I've been cooking it recently that I have really enjoyed is stir frying. And
Hmm.
I learned that the best way to do it, so I'll slice it into, 1/4 inch thick or less little medallions. And then I'll marinate it in soy sauce, some Chinese cooking wine, garlic, one of those things where it's just like, what do I feel like putting in here? But some of those more Asian things. And then cook it in a really hot wok with nothing, no oil in it. And
Okay.
if you don't crowd the pan and you get it, I mean, blazing hot, and just a few seconds on each side, oh my gosh. And then one of the things that I feel like, proponent of letting meat rest after you cook it. And so if you tent it with some tin foil for about 5 to 10 minutes after that, it's so good. And it's not even necessarily has to be an Asian thing like over rice, although it is good that way. But just even as, steak tips or something like that, that's been my favorite way most recently. And of course, I couldn't not mention what I call the national food of Gillespie County, which is smoked dry ring sausage. And being from New Braunfels, being in New Braunfels, another German town, I'm sure you're well familiar with that.
Yeah, man, that sounds good. I tell you what, this spring when we do our annual hog and turkey hunt, you're going to have to do that stir fry for us.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. And you're going to have to do the burger for me, because now I'm definitely want to try that.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, I got it.
Okay. Well, I think we're about out of time, but man, you're such an awesome dude, and I'm really glad you're my friend. I'm really glad you're an HHI. I'm really glad that we got to connect through this. I mean, I guess we've known each other for a couple years now, which is like time flies. And I can't wait to, I guess the spring hunt will be here before we know it, and we'll do this again.
Sounds good. I appreciate your time, Ron.
Yeah, Randy. Alrighty, I'll talk to you later.
Take care.
What a nice guy. Again, that's going to be my pat answer, or my pat closing for every episode. What a nice guy, or what a nice girl. But seriously, Randy is such a cool dude. He has been a good friend to me. He's been a good support. He has given me a lot of good advice about HHI and over the years, and I just am such a big fan of his, if you couldn't tell. I'd like to just direct all of you to his Facebook page, Backcountry Leather Goods, where he shows a lot of his work there. You can see how accomplished a leathersmith he actually is, and he comes up with some really cool ideas. And if you can't find a holster anywhere to fit your needs, give him a call, because I know he's going to want to make it for you. Anyway, okay, moving onward and upward. This podcast is going to be great this year, and I can't wait to see what else we're going to have in store for you. And I'll see you on the next episode. Good hunting. This podcast is produced by Handgun Hunters International. HHI is the only organization dedicated solely to supporting and growing the sport of handgun hunting. Membership gets you access to our great, well-moderated forum where friendly handgun hunters of all experience levels share stories and information from folks that have actual experience in our sport. We also host giveaways to our members of guns, gear, and ammo every month, and each prize is worth several times what membership costs. In addition to this podcast, we publish a free digital magazine, The Six Gunner, which is written exclusively by HHI members. If you are a handgun hunter or support handgun hunting in any way, you need to be a member of HHI. Join today at handgunhuntersinternational.com. Again, if you have any questions on how to get started in handgun hunting, please reach out to me at ryan@handgunhuntersinternational.com. If you think we deserve it, please leave us a 5-star review, and don't forget to follow Handgun Hunters International on social media at Handgun Hunters INT. God bless and good hunting.